Hey guys, Dr. Shook here. I hope you're doing wonderful today. In this video, what I want to talk about is I want to continue our discussion of thyroid hormones and some of the markers that I routinely order to get a better idea of what's happening to someone's thyroid. Okay, so let's talk about this marker called resin T3 uptake. Most of the time you're going to see it on a lab as just T3 uptake, okay? So resin T3 uptake is really a measure of available thyroid receptor sites on the cell. Okay, so think about this for a second. What I'm talking about is, remember, every cell in the body has a need for thyroid hormone, every single cell. And so every cell has receptors, or these little docking stations, where free T3 can attach to it and stimulate the cellular physiology. Now the resin T3 uptake, or T3 uptake, is probably what you're going to see on a lab if someone orders it, or to be T3U, something like that, is measuring those sites that don't have thyroid hormone attached to them. So the available receptor sites on the cell, okay? So here's how this thing is important and why it really works. I really like this as a marker. It gives me a lot of insight into some things that can happen with you that can skew your physiology and throw off your body's ability to be able to use thyroid hormone, okay? So one of the things that you'll see is let's talk about the most common things that I see in practice. So the sex hormones in particular, like testosterone and estrogen, can skew this T3 uptake high and low. And let me explain what some of the findings are and how it works. So for example, estrogens, okay, what you'll see with estrogens is that they tend to increase the number of thyroid binding globulins. Okay, remember, those thyroid binding globulins are these little proteins in the bloodstream that bind to free T3 and free T4. They bind together and they carry them through the body, through the bloodstream, and then they release them when they're near a cell that needs thyroid hormone. So, but as long as your thyroid hormone, the free T4, the free T3, as long as it's bound to that protein, it is not available for the cells of the body to use. So when you have an increase in estrogens, for example, and there's some other things that can do this, but very, very common pattern that I see are estrogens elevated, you have a lot more of these little binding proteins in the bloodstream. And when you do, they hold on and they bind up a lot more of the free T3. Okay, so they bind it up and they hold on to more of it. So there's less of it available for the cells of the body. So what you end up seeing is that the T3 uptake number tends to be resin T3 uptake tends to be low. Okay, and that's because there are not many of the receptors on the cell are filled. So the T3 uptake is low because more of that free T3 is bound to those little proteins carrying it through the blood. So if I get a T3 uptake, and I know I'm dealing with let's say I'm working with a woman that's either on birth control, or she's been on birth control in the past, or she's taking a hormone replacement, she's maybe perimenopausal, or maybe she's had a full hysterectomy and she's on a hormone replacement, and we order this, and this is below the ideal ranges. So I'll use more narrow ranges that are more sensitive to changes in the physiology. I'll also look at the lab range, and lab high and lab low, but those are very broad ranges. So we will look at functional and laboratory ranges, and if it's low, the uptake's low, then I'm thinking, could this be an estrogen related problem? Do we need to look at her estrogens very closely? Do we need to look at liver function and see if she's having a problem maybe clearing these estrogens from her body, and so they're building up, causing this high level of these thyroid binding globulins, these proteins in the blood that are holding on and keeping the thyroid hormone from being free and available for the cells, causing the T3 uptake to be lower. Okay, because there's more of those little receptors are empty. They don't have any thyroid hormone because all the thyroid hormone's stuck on those little transport proteins. Okay, so that's one of the patterns. That's one of the more common ones that I'll see in practice. Now, occasionally you'll see, and because I primarily work with women, because more women have thyroid problems than men do. More of them have Hashimoto's, so that's the predominant patient population that I see in distance consulting population. And so what you'll see there is sometimes women are exposed. Now sometimes they're taking testosterone, but a lot of times they're either exposed to testosterone that their partner or husband or someone is taking, that they're putting on their skin as a gel, and they're making skin to skin contact, and they're getting it transferred into their body, and it raises their testosterone levels. You'll also see that women that have PCOS, or polycystic ovarian syndrome, can have elevated levels of testosterones. And I'm going to talk to you about how that affects the T3 uptake and everything, but I want to kind of give you some ideas on how this can occur, on how you can get high testosterone levels as a woman. And you can so PCOS, from high insulin levels and insulin resistance, typically what it does is it upregulates an enzyme called 1720 lyase, and that enzyme will cause the conversion of a lot of your hormones, your steroid hormones, into DHEA and androgens like androstenediol and testosterone. Okay, so what happens is PCOS, man, that really pumps up typically the hormones, the androgen hormones in women, and you can see the same pattern. So let me explain what the pattern is. Okay, so we've already talked about the estrogen pattern. Now we're going to talk about the testosterone pattern and how it relates to T3 uptake. Okay, so when you see let's say you get a T3 uptake and the T3 uptake is high. Okay, if the T3 uptake's high, well, there's some other things you want to look at, right? Ideally you'd like to have some sex hormones too, but you don't always have that luxury, and especially if you're just screening to figure out what's going on and you're not trying to get every single test imaginable done. Well, you want to try to determine what could be happening with the person's physiology. So if T3 uptake is high, then what that's telling you is this: it's telling you that they're very well. So through your history, you would get an idea of whether or not maybe they have PCOS, facial hair, taking on more male-like characteristics, signs of testosterone, increases in testosterone. Okay, you would also question, the possibility of if you get these results back, does your husband or partner or whoever use testosterone? Are you using testosterone? Women are in bodybuilding, and so that people. Women are prescribed testosterone as well if they have low testosterone. So you've got to do the right history, or take the right history. And then, so what happens is that typically you'll see the T3 uptake will be higher, because what happens here is the androgen dominance, or the testosterone dominance, tends to reduce the number of those little carrier proteins in the blood, those thyroid binding globulins. So it drops the number. So because there's less, there's more free hormone floating in the bloodstream, and there's more of that free hormone attaches to the thyroid cells, or not the thyroid, but the receptor sites on all the cells of your body. Remember, so every cell needs thyroid hormone. Every cell has receptors on the cell for the thyroid hormone, and remember, it's the free hormones, the free thyroid hormones, that attach to the cell and stimulate the physiology. Well, the testosterone tends to reduce the number of those little carrier proteins that carry the thyroid, and because there's less of those, there tends to be more free hormone in the bloodstream, and that free hormone tends to saturate or attach to most of those receptors. So the receptors are full, so it causes the T3 uptake to be high. Okay, because remember, T3 uptake is a measure of available receptors on the cell, and if T3 uptake's high, then that means that there's really a lot of receptors are full. Okay, so it's interesting because you can also see that pattern can even create symptoms of like some hypo symptoms, because it creates resistance. There's so much hormone that's just saturating it that it actually can create some resistance and create some symptoms of hypothyroidism. So I really want to share that concept with you guys, because T3 uptake is a great, I think resin T3 uptake is a great marker. It's one that I use, and it helps to tell you what else is the potential problem, what else is contributing to this person's symptoms and problems, so you can like lay out the puzzle pieces, and try to figure it out. Okay, so I really appreciate you guys. I hope this has been helpful, and I'm going to go through some other markers in some other videos. So I appreciate you guys. If you need anything, just let us know. Thanks.